right in the Old Testament. Have you read that? Balaam had a donkey who talked to him and gave him messages. This gives me comfort as a teacher, because if a donkey can teach us, certainly I can. Does that help? I'm using kind words for a donkey. All right. We need to get at Balaam a little bit. I mean, you can read all about Balaam. It's a fascinating story, very puzzling to me. I wrestle with Balaam quite a bit. The whole story of a talking donkey. But here's an incident that I think he's talking about in this particular case. It's in Numbers 25:1. When the Israelites were camped near Acacia, the men committed sexual sins with the Moabite women. Remember what we're saying, conforming to the culture? This is really conforming to the culture. Oh, the Moabite women invited the men to come and join their sacrifices to their false gods. So the Israelites, who at this time are in Moab, and the king of Moab is a man named Balak, joined in worshiping these false gods. They ate the sacrifices and worshiped these gods. There the Israelites began worshiping the false god Baal of Peor. And the Lord became very angry with them. Yes, indeed. Why is he angry with them? Because they're worshiping false gods. Because they're conforming to their culture. Let's skip down a little bit here. You gotta love this. Go to Numbers 31:16. The women get to live. The men eventually are killed who did this. Isn't that unusual? These are the women who listened to Balaam and caused the men of Israel to turn away from the Lord, that time at Peor. The disease will come to the Lord's people again. Yeah. So this all has to do with Balaam. And what Balaam did was misled the people by telling them, it's okay to do this. God isn't going to mind. You know who God really is. You can worship God in any way. Here's how he tells that to us today. Doesn't he speak to you that way? It's okay. It's okay. You can do this. I know that you're a Christian. But you know, you can do this, and you're just trying to talk to your friends and get along with them. It's okay. Wow. You can read Numbers 22 through 25. You'll be fascinated by the story of Balaam. I don't have time to deal with Balaam.
Kim,
yes.
Question on that. Bringing it forward to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The power of grace. What? I mean, you know, I think Paul said it, you know, should we continue to sin so that grace might abound? And the answer to that is no.
It is. The power of grace is what the book of Revelation is all about. As long as I can find my little cursor, I'll get where I need to go. Okay, what did they do? You have people there who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak, that was the king of the Moabites, the Israelites, to entice the Israelites to sin by eating food sacrificed to idols and committing sexual immorality. Likewise, you also have those who hold to the teaching of the Nicolaitans. In other words, he's kind of grouping these together, and he's saying your problem is you're doing things that conform to the world. I will soon come to you, and will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. You're glad because you go, I got ears. It's not what he's saying, right? He's not talking about your physical ear. He's talking about are you really listening to what I say? Let's go on. To the angel of the church in Thyatira, verse 18. Now he's taken that from the picture of the eyes like a blazing fire and feet like burnished bronze. I know your deeds, your love, your faith, your service, your perseverance, that you are now doing more than you did at first. Nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate the woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess. By her teaching, she leads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. What's the people's problem again? Conforming to the culture. Sexual immorality is rampant in our culture.
It was rampant there.
It was.
They had when we saw it, they had just a sidewalk with a heart and a foot pointing towards where the brothel was.
Whoa. A heart and a foot pointing to the brothel.
Yeah.
That's in Ephesus, right?
That's in Ephesus.
Yeah, I saw that.
They did it in Pompeii too.
Wow.
It was far worse there.
Really?
Well,
Okay.
more graphic.
More graphic? Okay. I think the problem in our society is the availability of sexually explicit material is overwhelming in our society. And what I've found is that things that can be used for good, the greater good they can be used for can also be used for greater evil. And I think the internet is a great source for good and for bringing people together. And I think it can also be used for great evil. And I think that some of the evil there is when you realize that over 40% of all websites on the internet are devoted to sexual pornography. And when you realize that over 70% of the income from the internet is from sexual websites, this becomes scary. We as a society have a problem with sex. All societies have had a problem with sex. And it just continues.
It's not much different today than it was either, because I mean, it was as graphic as it is today.
Yeah, it was graphic and it was just in front of them all the time. It was a lot like being in Amsterdam, from what I've heard. I haven't been in Amsterdam, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
Pretty much. It's actually more in Amsterdam.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's kind of like if you were going down New York and you had the windows with the actual women in the windows.
Yeah.
It's like window shopping for
Yeah, like window shopping for your prostitute. Yeah.
It's even worse than that, because if you get on the wrong street, because of the canals, you can't jaywalk to get off the street. You have to either go forward or back. Been there, done that.
Hey, we were in a place, and I'm walking down the street.
Was that a confession?
My wife and Lisa, as you know, was a year or so, and we were doing Europe on $5 a day. I was in the Navy, and so we were, trying to use cheap motels or whatever. But we had a decent place to stay, but we got the wrong street coming home from getting pizza one night. So.
Oh man! Hey, see, my problem is I don't really recognize what's going on. I'm walking down the street with Georgia, and. Was I a little in front of you? How did that go?
Which place?
You look over and you said, that woman's a prostitute.
Oh, we were on Larimer Street.
And I go, what woman?
He does. He's oblivious. Which is a blessing.
And there are some men, though, that have an attraction so that they see it first.
Yeah.
I mean, we're wired differently, and a lot has to do with our upbringing.
It's interesting, if you go to 1 Corinthians 7:2-5, the instruction is, because there's so much immorality, each man and each woman should have their own wife. So it talks about the importance of marriage.
The importance of marriage and that sexual responsibility to each other.
In our culture, we're losing the commitment of marriage.
That's a good point. All right, we're talking about Jezebel in verse 21. She's unwilling to repent of her immorality. I'm going to cast her on a bed of suffering. I will strike her children dead. The churches will know that I am he who searches hearts and minds and will repay each of you according to your deeds. We see what's going on. We haven't even talked about the persecuted church yet, have we? Just a little bit. But we've really talked about conforming to the culture. And a lot of us have missed this aspect of the book of Revelation. It's dealing with the two groups.
Sorry for jumping ahead. Is that where you're saying that the coming of it now, through John's speech, is through this, not the true coming?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that Christ comes into our life when we need Him at that moment. And that there will come a time when Christ appears physically to everyone. But what the rescue that the book of Revelation is talking about is not primarily that rescue. The rescue the book of Revelation is talking about is Jesus taking care of things at the time they're occurring. Okay? Thyatira. Let's move on. I love the picture at the end in verse 28 when it says, I will give him the morning star. This picture is used twice in the book of Revelation. It's one of my favorite images. The morning star. Now, I'm an astronomer. So when we talk about the morning star, today I understand the morning star is Venus. It's not a star at all. Can't the Bible get it right? Why didn't it say the morning planet? Because, frankly, the Bible's not a scientific book. Venus is also the evening star. But Jesus is always described as the morning star. Because it's so bright that it's the first star you see after the night of darkness. Now, in our lives, if you're living in a city where immorality is rampant all around you and you're trying to live a Christian life, what happens is you go through that darkness of your life, but the first thing that you see is you got to see Jesus. Jesus is there. He is the morning star. Out of the darkness, the first thing that you'll see is Jesus. And you have to keep that in mind.
Isn't it also the first star that appears at night?
Yes, it's also the evening star.
So, as you go into darkness, you have to remember that He's still there.
And that's the other message, although He's never called the evening star in the book of Revelation or anywhere in the Bible. Chapter 3, the church in Sardis. These are the words of Him who holds the complete Spirit of God and the complete power of the universe. I know your deeds. You have a reputation of being alive, but you are dead. So what can you say about Sardis? It doesn't look good. This church is already dead. He's saying you're dead. I have not found your deeds complete in the sight of my God. He's saying, Sardis, I don't have anything good to say about you. But look at this. Repent. If you don't wake up, I'll come like a thief. You'll not know at what time I come to you. This gives me comfort. First, He wants him to repent. The second thing is, I love verse 4. You have a few people in Sardis who have not soiled their clothes. They will walk with me dressed in white, for they are worthy. Wow. What does that tell you about God?
Sees individuals.
He sees individuals. His right hand is on you. God is telling us that no matter what is going on around you, and no matter what terrible things are happening, if you can remain faithful, I will save you.
Even if you go to the wrong church?
Even if you go to the wrong church. Even if you don't go to church. Even if evil surrounds you and there's nobody else you can confide in, even if you have nobody you can talk to about your faith, I will save you. And you're dressed in white, because white is purity.
You know, one of the things that reminds me of all the people that do the things in God's name, whose heart has nothing to do with God. The deeds themselves, and I think he was talking about the deeds themselves, are honorable, good, great for humanity, but for the wrong reasons. You're serving the wrong God.
That's really clear.
And that's
here.
what it's waking up.
Yeah. Church in Philadelphia. The words of him is holy and true, holds the key of David. Key of David means Jesus is descended from David. So he holds the key to David's house, which says that he is the king. I know your deeds. See, I've placed before you an open door that no one can shut. That's because there are people from all around the world that have come into this city. So this is the place that the church is going to spread from. He goes, you have little strength, but you've kept my faith. You've not denied my name. I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who claim to be Jews, though they are not. These are Jewish non-Christians. And he's saying, I need to acknowledge that I love you. You've kept my command to endure patiently. I will keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come upon the whole world to test those who live on the earth. In other words, this whole thing that's happening on the whole earth, he's saying, there are going to be difficulties you're going to face, persecution, especially in your city where there's all kinds of people from all around the world. We're going to check out that persecution. And then he says, I am coming soon. The fact again that he says, I am coming soon, by the way, we didn't count that earlier. But that he says, I am coming soon here says, hang on. Don't lose your crown. He's actually saying, your strength is little, but just hang in there. I like this church.
Do you know, I don't know most of the cities or the churches, do you have a lot of background on that? I was thinking of your earlier comment about the internet and stuff like that.
Right.
And I mean, it's prevalent wherever you go, but there's only about 1 billion people on Earth that have access to the internet. So even though that's all our culture, it's at the culture at that time. I mean, I know Pompeii, I've been there.
Yeah.
And there was a huge disparity between people. So I understand why people probably went that way, but they made a poor choice.
Right.
So they chose to work
Okay.
in the industry. So my question is, are most of these cities thriving like ports, or are they small cities that, you know, just, does that make sense?
Yes. These are fairly small cities. Let's see. The city at Philadelphia at this time had a population of about 18,000 people. So it's not even big in those standards of that day. Rome had a population, in 70 AD, Rome had a population of over 1 million. That was a huge city for those times. That's because they could deal with sewage and things. Ephesus was more like 45,000. Philadelphia is small, but it sits in a broad valley. It's surrounded by rich farming country. So it has a lot going for it. Let's see, it sits on a fault line. It had quakes in 17 AD, smaller shocks over the next 20 years that really diminished the city. But they tried to rename the city because Tiberius gave them, the Caesar Tiberius gave them a lot of help rebuilding it. They tried to rename their city Neo-Caesarea to honor him. So, but it was a very, compared to the others, this is a very cosmopolitan.
And I guess what I was saying, because at the end of the day, the ports that conforming to the culture is general enough that it can be anything.
Yes. It can be anything, and it turns out to be about anything. Yeah. Finally, let's do the very last one. Yeah, I'm going to do the last one. Sorry. Sorry for those of you who have to go get children. You can go. Laodicea. Laodicea is a city that had a spring, so when he talks about them, he says, I know your deeds, you're neither cold nor hot. It had a hot water spring. By the time it got to the city, it was lukewarm. I wish you were one or the other. Because you're lukewarm, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. Laodicea was a very wealthy city. They made a lot of money. So they're saying, we're rich, we don't need a thing. And don't you realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked? And then he says, get gold refined in the fire. They have gold. But refined in the fire means we want your spirit to be tested. Then you can really be rich. And white clothes because you've been cleansed by the Spirit. So you can cover your nakedness. Salve to put on your eyes. Laodicea was famous for its eye salve that it sold. He says, I'll give you salve to put on your eyes so you can really see. I love this. Those who I love, I rebuke and discipline. Wow. These are hard statements. But as you read the book of Revelation, keep in mind these two things. They're pretty general. Right now in the United States, we are not a persecuted church. There are places in the world where it is persecuted. But we do have a problem with conforming to our culture. And the book of Revelation is going to address both those. But remember what we learned today. The first thing you have to do when you're confronting anything is you need to realize who's on the throne. If you know who's on the throne, your other decisions will be in order with that. But never forget who sits on the throne. Next week, we're going to see another throne scene that John envisions. Read chapters 4 and 5 for next week. They're delightful. You'll love it. All right, we'll see you then.
Jim, the earthquake was 6/14/80. 6/14.
Oh, so that was quite a bit later. It destroyed it. Okay. Great, thanks.